What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and you check out the content. And with that being said, man, this video, I'm really talking about Isiah Thomas. And because I ran across a video that, in my opinion, I think it just hits on everything, right? As far as like Isiah Thomas and his relationship with other NBA players back in the day, right? Now, I remember watching Isiah Thomas in the league with all these guys, right? And Isiah Thomas never had a really good relationship with these guys, right? Because back in those days, it was like it wasn't about being friends and signing each other jerseys and stuff like that. And Isiah Thomas, by him being the smallest guy, like one of the smaller guys in there, I think Isiah Thomas had a little bit of a Napoleon, what they call it, a Napoleon complex. Where and he just had to really, he felt like he had to do a little bit more just to show people he was tough. And so with that type of attitude and that approach, and Isiah Thomas, remember, he comes from Chicago. He a tough dude, right? And so that's what really rubbed people the wrong way, because Isiah Thomas took it a step further. Like, everybody could understand competition and they could understand, competitiveness and stuff like that. But Isiah Thomas was really the guy who just took it to a whole nother level. Remember, he played, their team was called the Bad Boy Pistons, and they was physical and they would do anything to win, right? And a lot of people said, like, all those guys were dirty basketball players. That was the thing around the league. So, and I remember Isiah Thomas, he had a lot of enemies. I mean, a lot of guys really didn't like him. Terry Porter, I remember Terry Porter played for the Portland Trail Blazers. Him and Terry Porter never really got along. What's the guard from Utah? John Stockton, Karl Malone, even Magic Johnson. Like, Magic Johnson was supposed to be Isiah Thomas' best friend in the league. Well, it was Magic Johnson, Isiah Thomas, and Mark Aguirre, right? All those guys were supposed to be really tight. But they had a falling out when Detroit met LA in the championship, right? And then Isiah just, did some things and that Magic probably thought was dirty. And then, so they had a falling out. And I remember after that falling out, now they came back and they kissed each other on the cheek that next game after they got into like a little scuffle. But ever since then, Magic and Isiah were never really close, like, what people said they were before that. Isiah, and then, everybody know about Isiah and Mike, and then, they tried, Mike said it, or some people said that Isiah tried to freeze him out during the All-Star game, right? So Isiah just had, he had a ton of enemies in the league, even some guys on his team, right? I remember one time people said that he fought Bill Laimbeer in practice, like punched Bill Laimbeer in the eye. Then there was a clip of when what was the other guy? Not Bill Laimbeer, but Rick Mahorn. He swung on Rick Mahorn a couple times. Now, this is when Rick Mahorn was playing with the Sixers, and he took a couple swings at Rick Mahorn. So a lot of people really didn't really they admired him as a basketball player, but other than that, man, people just did not, his peers, they didn't mess with him. Now, from the outside looking in as a fan, I'm thinking like, because I was really, really young, then I'm thinking like it's competition, right? It's par for the course. And that's probably how most people see, like, you see a bunch of guys, who want to win. And so they just competitive, right? But for some reason, Isiah just rubbed people the wrong way. And so when it came to that 92 Olympics, these guys wanted no part of them. And so what I did is I ran across a video from it's called 4 Eye Sports, and they also brought up the point, and they focused on like what people thought about Isiah as a whole. Like, how was he looked at as a whole by his peers in the NBA? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play the video. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to give some of my input.
Bulls will handle it at the other end. Here's a steal by Thomas. A few weeks ago, we told you the story of Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas. The feud. The Dream Team vote.
Loose to Jordan. Here come the Bulls back. Hang it in.
The way one man used his power to erase another man's legacy. And your response was loud. Thousands of you watched. Hundreds of you commented. And the question that kept coming up over and over again, the one that split the comment section completely down the middle, was this. Was it really Jordan? Was it really one man's grudge that kept Isiah Thomas off the greatest basketball roster ever assembled? Or was there something deeper going on? Something darker? Something the original story did not fully tell you? Here is what we did not tell you in that first video. Michael Jordan was not alone. Not even close. The night the Dream Team vote happened, Isiah Thomas was not rejected by one man. He was rejected by an entire generation of NBA players, his peers, the men who played alongside him and against him for over a decade.
Now, to me, that made sense, right? Because anytime nowadays, it just seems that like more people was involved. Remember, Chuck Daly was a coach on that Dream Team. He was a coach, and he didn't even, really stick up for Isiah Thomas, and he was a coach. So, it just makes sense to me that it was not just Michael Jordan. It was Karl Malone was on there, and Karl Malone could not stand Isiah Thomas. Like I said, him and Magic had a falling out. Scottie Pippen was on there. Scottie Pippen, another person who could not stand Isiah Thomas.
The men who knew him best. Magic Johnson, Isiah's best friend in the entire league. The man he kissed on the cheek before games. The man he called his brother.
So look, they say that Isiah Thomas and Magic Johnson, they were best friends. To this day, now it don't really seem like they have a relationship now. It's Isiah Thomas and Mark Aguirre. Those guys, and I think both of those guys, Mark Aguirre is from Chicago also. So it's Mark Aguirre and Isiah. They still friends to this day, close friends, but not Magic. Magic, so Isiah Thomas did and said some things. And I remember when Magic Johnson came down with that, what was it? The HIV or something like, I don't know what HIV. And so Isiah Thomas, they said was somebody who said that Magic was, was bi, right? And so it was rumored that Isiah Thomas put some rumors about Magic, his preference, sexual preference out there. So yeah, it was crazy.
The greatest point guard to ever play this game. He's my baby.
Magic Johnson did not defend Isiah Thomas when it mattered most. Some reports go further than that. Some reports say Magic was one of the primary voices keeping Isiah off that roster. Scottie Pippen refused to play with him. Charles Barkley did not want him either. This was not Michael Jordan's grudge. This was a verdict, delivered collectively by the greatest collection of basketball talent ever assembled. And the reason behind that verdict, the real reason, the one that goes deeper than the Jordan feud and the walkout and the bad boy era, is the story we are telling today.
Look, and just think about it. If Isiah Thomas was respected around the league, which he was, and Mike said, man, I just don't want this dude. I don't want to play. You got Magic and everybody else who had a history with Isiah would have stepped up and say, y'all gonna have to put that to the side. That's why I don't believe it was just Mike, because other players in the league would have stepped up and said, you know what? We all competitors, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Karl Malone, we all, everybody had their disagreements. Everybody came to, pushing each other around, and they got physical with each other, right? But those guys were all able to put their differences aside so they can play for the Dream Team. But it was something different about Isiah Thomas, where people was like, nah, this not going to work. John Stockton was on that team. John Stockton didn't like Isiah Thomas, And so all these guys have been around Isiah Thomas for a decade. And by this time, man, they was like, you know what? I don't want to play with him.
This is the other side of the Isiah Thomas story, and it is darker than anything we told you the first time. To understand why the rejection was so total and so unanimous, you first need to understand how Isiah Thomas operated, not on the court. We covered that in the first video, often. because there were two versions of Isiah Thomas depending on who you asked, and the gap between those two versions is where this entire story lives. Version 1 was the public Isiah, the smile, the charm, the magnetism that made him one of the most recognizable and beloved figures in the NBA during the late 1980s and early 1990s. He was electric in interviews, warm with fans. He had the kind of personality that made rooms light up when he walked in. Sponsors loved him. Broadcasters loved him. The casual fan loved him. Version 2 was the private Isiah, the one his peers experienced behind closed doors, and that version, according to players, coaches, executives, and insiders who were in those rooms, was significantly different from the public face. The word that comes up again and again when people who played with and against Isiah Thomas during that era describe him is the same word: manipulative. Not difficult, not hot-headed, not aggressive in the way that other competitive players of that era were aggressive. Manipulative, calculated, strategic, in a way that went beyond basketball and into something more personal and more unsettling for the people on the receiving end of it.
See, all right, so manipulative, right, is the word that they use. And I can agree with that, right? And that's why I said, and like the guy said, when you try to manipulate, it's more personal. And those guys, you know, you talking about a bunch of alpha males, they took that kind of thing personal. Like it went beyond just being physical on the court. He was trying to manipulate, and a really good example of that is when Isiah tried to freeze Michael Jordan out in that All-Star game. I think that was Michael Jordan's first All-Star games, right? And he just tried to freeze Mike out. Mike didn't really like that. But I guess they thought it was like almost like hazing, and it didn't go over well. And next thing you know, man, Isiah Thomas is on the outside looking in, and this is what I think that Isiah Thomas want to blame Mike, but it wasn't Mike. I can tell sometimes too, like by the interviews, because everybody is kind of closed mouthed about it. You know, everybody was like, I don't, they act like they don't know what's going on when you ask them about why Isiah Thomas wasn't on that dream team. And so anytime that somebody just say or try to put it out there like it was Mike, it might have been Mike, but like I said, Chuck Daly was the coach. Magic Johnson was supposed to be his best friend, and Karl Malone, all those guys, man, they didn't dig Isiah Thomas. They really didn't dig him, man. And so when Scottie Pippen really hated him because he played with Mike, when they was on the Bulls, and they used to beat the hell out of Scottie Pippen. So Isiah Thomas had burnt a lot of bridges by the time it came for to play on that dream team, man. And so I guess people was like, you know what, we don't want to bring his drama on the road with us or on his tour with us. And so they left him off, and Chuck Daly ain't do nothing about it, like I said. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, I'm gonna check you all out in the next video. Peace.